You know, for this video, creo que voy a tomar una cerveza. What's up amigos, Levi here with Latino Fluency, where I teach you Latino Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese, and of course a little bit about Latin America. In today's video, I want to talk about the topic of Spanish. Is it difficult? Is it easy to learn for us gringos? So the reality is there's a lot of stuff on the internet, there's a lot of just common knowledge that says one of two things. Either A, Spanish is one of the easiest language to learn, if not the easiest language to learn for English speakers, or B, that it is one of the more difficult languages to learn. Sometimes you hear that. I've heard more often than not that, oh, Spanish is easy. Spanish is easy to learn if you have a background in a Western language. If you speak English or German or French or Italian, yeah, Spanish is easy. It's easy. I'm gonna give you my opinion in this very, hopefully short video. So here we go. So the idea of Spanish, it's easy, or Spanish, it's so hard, it's somewhere actually in between. And this is based on my over 10 years of experience really having the language be a big part of my life. So Spanish, in my opinion, can either be pretty simple to learn or it can be extremely difficult to learn. And there's a very simple reason for this, and that is because there are so many variations of Spanish. So where I'm from, at least in the United States, how we learn Spanish is we don't discriminate in between dialects or cultures where we're learning Spanish from. So we don't focus on Mexican Spanish. We don't focus on Spanish from Spain, Castilian Spanish. We don't focus on Colombian Spanish. What we do, and this is because, in my opinion, kind of this culture of inclusivity and diversity in the United States, we kind of just dive in and try to study and try to learn this very neutral Spanish. However, in my experience and in my opinion, this actually just, it hurts us more than it helps us. So we're trying to be almost like politically correct and not say that one Spanish is superior than another, that all of them, we need to know a little bit about all of them. In my opinion, this is a huge mistake, of course, in case you couldn't tell. In my opinion, Spanish can be much more simple, much more easier to learn, and you can learn it much more quickly if you simply focus on one dialect when you're starting out. Until you are, I would say, like an intermediate, high intermediate level of fluency, pick one. So, and for me personally, I'm mostly focused on Mexican Spanish. That's what I ended up just zeroing in and focusing on. So you learn how Mexicans are conjugating their verbs. You learn how Mexicans are using idioms and slang. You learn what vocabulary Mexicans are primarily using. And you go from there. That's your base. You build that base knowledge, and that, to me, is the best way to go about it, and it makes Spanish way less confusing, way less like convoluted and confusing. So keep in mind that how you probably learned Spanish in junior high or in high school or even younger was probably this like hodgepodge mix of, you're gonna learn a little bit about vosotros, and then you're gonna learn a little bit about ustedes, and then this is how we say this in Mexico, but in Colombia they say this, and in Argentina. Guys, that's just making things way too difficult. It's one of my massive pet peeves with how people teach Spanish and how people learn Spanish, at least in the United States. So keep that in mind. Spanish can be very difficult if you're taking that route. Spanish can be much more simple and feel a lot more doable if you are really just zeroing in and focusing in on one dialect. So keep that in mind, guys. That's my opinion. I don't think Spanish is this impossible to learn language. I think it has a few things with the accent, like the R, for example. I think some of those things can be difficult for some English speakers. Definitely with the grammar, there are certain things like with conjugations of verbs, for example, especially when you get into the subjunctive, that's a little confusing because we don't have that in English, right? So bear that in mind. There are some little difficult nuances. There are some challenging things that you'll see here and there. But on a scale of 1 to 10, comparing Spanish to all other world languages, I would put Spanish at probably 4. That's just my opinion. To speak it fluently, to speak it very well. I'm sure that there are much, much harder languages. In my experience, French was quite a bit harder. Brazilian Portuguese can be a little trickier as well. So I think Spanish is very doable. And if you're learning Spanish right now, buena suerte, you got this. Hasta pronto, hasta el próximo video, amigos. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos just like this with me, make sure to subscribe. And that's all I got for today. Espero verlos en el próximo video. Hasta pronto, chicos.